Hey, what's going on, tech fans? Eric here once again on Tech of Tomorrow. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we brought you guys the king of the Pascal ring, the GTX 1080. Now let's introduce you to its little brother, the 1070. Now, just looking at the card, you guys can see the card looks exactly like the GTX 1080. It's based off the same Pascal process, the same 16 nanometer FinFET process, all that's exactly the same, just some of the specs are going to be a little lower. The 1070 has a base clock of 1506 and a boost clock speed of 1683 megahertz. It also ships with 15 streaming multiprocessors and 1920 CUDA cores. The GTX 1070 features a fully enabled 256-bit memory interface and ships with 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory. And this provides up to 256 gigabytes a second of peak memory bandwidth. Its 120 texture units also provide a peak texture fill rate of nearly 202 gigatexels a second. The GTX 1070 requires a 2-card slot and sizes in at 10.5 inches in length and 4.4 inches in height. Another thing you guys are going to absolutely love about the GTX 1070 is its low power requirements. The recommended power supply is a 500 watt power supply, and it has a single 8-pin power connector that only requires 150 watts to make it work. As we spin the card around to the back, you guys can see it. There's a nice backplate on the back of the card. We all love a backplate because it keeps our hands from getting cut and keeps our video card from getting damaged. And also, while we're on the back of the card, you guys can see there are 2 SLI fingers for doing dual SLI. As far as the connections go, there are 3 display ports, a single HDMI, and a single DVI connection. One thing to take in mind, if you do have a monitor that uses a G-Sync technology, you will need to use the DisplayPort to use it. Like all of the GeForce GTX GPUs based on NVIDIA's Pascal architecture, the GeForce GTX 1070 ships with a new memory compression engine that offers new modes for color compression. So all in all, those are the specs of this beauty. Now before we actually jump into the testing, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the boost clock speeds and how this card performed. Now the maximum power boost I was seeing with my 1070, now mind you, this is with the power target set at 100%, the temp set to 83 Celsius, was a maximum of 1822 megahertz, but this was when it was cool. As the card warms up, it dropped to 1797 megahertz. As I was running the card, the voltage varied from 900 millivolts to about 933 millivolts as the card started to warm up. And this is with the fan speeds running around 2,180 RPMs. Now the worst throttle I ever saw was at 1645 megahertz, and this is because the card actually had a temperature threshold that was over 83 Celsius. And at that time you can see the card starts to throttle down. Now when we ran the stress test, this is running the Heaven engine at a continuous loop, we saw maximum temp values of 86 Celsius, but they generally balanced out at about 84 Celsius and cut out all the throttling. Now you have to take into consideration, the base clock on this card is 1506 megahertz, and we can see that the pretty much standard boost that we're getting is 1784 megahertz, so that's a pretty damn wide boost for the 1070. For those of you wondering what exactly do we use to test these video cards on, we use the following components. For the motherboard, we used a Gigabyte Z170X Gaming 7 motherboard, an Intel i7-6700K processor. We also use Corsair's 32 gigabytes of their DDR4 3200 megahertz memory, a 256 gigabyte SSD from Kingston for our base drive. We also have a 480 gigabyte drive from Zotac as our gaming drive. So with that said, it's time to rock and check out 25 games on the GTX 1070. Let's rock. folks, so there you have it. The GeForce GTX 1070 by your friends over at NVIDIA. And I think for many people out there, I think this is going to be the sweet spot for them because you can get this card for under $500 and you guys can see it's still faster than a Titan X. So it's a really, really fast ass card. As far as the temperatures and all that stuff go, you guys saw we were hitting some really decent overclocking just through the boost. If we wanted to increase the fan speeds and do all that stuff and change the power requirements to crazy things, I'm sure we could boost the clock even further, but those numbers right out of the box are just absolutely fan-frickin-tastic. And the fact the card runs pretty quiet at that time, I also like. Usually through the videos, we usually have the system going through the entire time and you can't even hear the system. Like I said, the 1070 is a wee bit louder than the 1080, but not so much you're gonna be going, hey man, did you give me a fan blower? So all in all, that's good. So I want to hear what you guys have to say down below. I'm Ulrich. You guys have been watching Tech of Tomorrow. And like usual, down below that like button, we'll have links to where you guys can see more information about this card or to get one for yourself if you're looking to buy. You've been watching Tech of Tomorrow. If you're not subscribed, well, you should be.